Fiber internet is coming to Clinton. Get on the install list now.
Your friend in Central Illinois. WHOW.
Top of the morning. Thanks for being with us. I'm your host today, Seth Lawrence. The WHOW Morning Show streams to Facebook and YouTube, brought to you by Peterson Insurance, your Pekin Insurance agent in Clinton. My guest in this segment of the morning show, Mr. Fred Lamkey, Superintendent of Mount Pulaski Schools. Good morning, Mr. Lamkey. Are things slowing down for you at all over there in Mount Pulaski? It's been a wild week for you folks.
It has been a wild week, and it's been cold, and it's been not a lot of sleep for a lot of folks in Mount Pulaski this week trying to take care of our problems we've had.
Well, let's start there. It's like a laundry list of problems. What's been going on? What's kept you busy?
Yeah, well, to be honest, the community of Mount Pulaski and our schools, everybody's great. We're functioning. We're moving forward, but it hasn't been easy for us. Got a phone call Sunday afternoon from one of my maintenance people saying, hey, boiler's down at the grade school. And what ended up happening was, on obviously the coldest weekend in years, we had a fuse blow that runs the circulating pump for our boiler, which puts the heat throughout our building. So we didn't have any heat in the early morning hours of Sunday. And our northern exposed walls, we had pipes that froze up.
Mm-hmm.
So we got our boiler back running. We started thawing some things out to discover that we have some major issues. We got some pipes that had burst. We had some radiators that had coils burst, and basically out of my 10 junior high classrooms, I had one that had heat.
Oh, wow. Holy cow.
So we went into the Martin Luther King holiday with some big problems, wondering how we were going to get through the week. We use, and I guess I'm giving a plug here, but Henson Robinson did a great job. They came out immediately Sunday night, and they worked with my maintenance directors and everybody until the wee hours of the morning to get the boiler running again. I found out at 3 a.m. that the boiler was up and running. Then they spent the whole next day trying to just thaw out pipes. I mean, you don't know how long it takes to thaw out pipes with heaters until you try and do it. It took the better part of the day, and then we discovered all of our burst pipes. And that put school in question for coming back Tuesday. So that's how the week started off. And it didn't end there, but that's kind of what got everything kicked off for us.
Well, and in a way, and I don't know, like, did you end up calling off school on? Did you call off school on Tuesday? I don't remember seeing your name on the list, if I'm being honest.
No, we were on the list. Maybe not the list you're looking at, but no, we did call off school, and it was because of the temperatures.
Right.
We could have managed school even with our burst pipes, but it did give us an extra day to work on things and get things up. So we were looking at the temperatures. It was going to be consistently somewhere between -20 and -30 wind chill. And we have students that ride buses for 45, 50 minutes. That can take 35, 40 minutes to get a bus to somebody if it breaks down. And those temperatures were just too cold to take the chances on Tuesday. So for the first time in my career, I called a day on account of cold.
So you mentioned, though, that the burst pipe and the heat was not the only issue that you faced, Mr. Lamkey. You said the problems didn't stop there. Was there any other issues that were of note or that kept you busy?
Well, all the way up to Wednesday morning, we weren't sure how many classrooms we were going to have at the grade school. But I'm telling you, by the great work of Louis Bully and Gene Schultz and Jim Bishop, our maintenance people here, we had every classroom functioning normally on Wednesday. So that's just an attestament to the time they put in. And I bet collectively, each one of them probably didn't have 8 hours sleep in 3 days. I mean, they were here till the wee hours of the morning getting things done. So just a big shout out to them. But we did. We functioned. We got everybody in the building and everything was good. Last night, yesterday afternoon, got a phone call, went over to the high school, and we had a sprinkler system freeze up and burst. So I came into our brand new high school, into our new multi-purpose gym, to about 1.5 to 2 inches of water from the sprinkler pipe.
Wow. And, that could not have been good for that gym floor.
Yeah, it's not. It's a little wavy in the corner that it was the deepest. We call them Zambonis, the machines that clean the floor, and we got them in there and sucked up as much water as we could. We got Peerless to come out and get to the floors. And honestly, in an hour and a half, we had all the water off the floor. We had things shut off. So we did, I think, just about as good as we possibly could there. So now we're dealing with how do we finish mitigating that gym floor to keep it from being damaged permanently. So we're working with the floor manufacturer and insurance company to see how we go about this. And so it's still going on, but the good news is we're not losing a second of class. We got everybody in the building. We're functioning normally. We got a ball game tonight that we're going to have, and school goes on as usual.
Yeah, wow, that's something. You mentioned a little wavy on the gym floor. Like, is that going to need to be addressed? Is it going to be playable for the rest of the year? Like, what's the status of it?
Well, the multi-purpose is generally just a practice gym. We
okay, good.
Some tournaments in there, though, like when we do our larger volleyball tournaments. But it's not going to change any of our scheduling for the near future. And I've seen a lot of circumstances where gym floors have taken water and they've had problems. And what starts out looking really bad, sometimes you get the right people working with the floors and you can actually fix the problem. I can't say it always gets perfect, but you can get it pretty good. So we're optimistic that we're going to get that gym back up and running before we know it.
Does that impact your like PE classes or anything of that nature?
We're really fortunate at the high school that we've got the 1963 gym that we used for years as our only main PE gym. So no, our PE classes will be just fine. We've got a really nice weight room facility, and half of that multi-purpose gym is still functional. It didn't have any water on it, so
very good.
Yep, we're still able to manage.
Very good. Now, Fred Lamkey, superintendent of Mount Pulaski Schools, is our guest on the phone for this morning. And Mr. Lamkey, you talked about, taking the day off on Tuesday because of temperatures. So talk to me a little bit about just kind of your process in working through that decision, who you turn to, who you're talking to, how that decision is made on your end of things. Speak to that a little bit.
Sure. When it comes to inclement weather, it's 50-50. There are going to be people mad at you either way, that mad that you had school and mad that you didn't have school. So that's the first thing, you're not going to make everybody happy with it. And there's so many factors that go into it. We have some variables set that we say, okay, this is a concern. For example, obviously when you have just icy roads, that makes it treacherous to get to school, and oftentimes that's going to lead to closure. We set a -20 wind chill factor as anything that below -20 is being too cold to have school. And that can also happen. That can happen in the wee morning hours. So maybe the time you're getting on the bus, 7, 8, 9, it's that cold. But as the day warms up, it's not that cold. So we may do a delayed start on a day like that. But also it could be a day where maybe the wind chill is just a -10 to -15, but the road conditions are such that it's likely somebody could end up in trouble. And then we don't want to put people in a situation where they could be stuck out in the cold for a long period of time, whether it be a bus or students traveling to school or parents bringing their students. So, there's a wide range of variables that we really got to consider with this. And I don't make those decisions by myself. My transportation director is a longtime Mount Pulaski resident. He knows the roads that drift shut become the problem points. He drives those in the morning to try and find out for sure. We have a great relationship with John Stewart, the Mount Pulaski Township Road Commissioner. Our SR officer, Josh Ferris of Logan County Police, has officers on the road at all times. We confer with him. And then I talk with the area superintendent. And we come together, and it really is a process of how we get to make that decision. It's not a flip of a coin, and it's not one person saying, no, it's too snowy, we got to close it. There's a lot that goes into it. And it's not a science. And I've made decisions before where I've closed school, only to find out that everybody's out driving around on dry roads in the afternoon because it wasn't as bad as we anticipated. And there's been times I wish I'd called it off and sent kids home earlier and kept them in school. So it's not a science, but there's a lot that goes into the process.
No question. And so when it comes to like cold temperatures, like is there a threshold where you say absolutely not? This is where we're gonna. If it gets here, we're out. Talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, it is that it's that -20 wind chill.
Okay.
Is what we were hang that on. The actual cold, and obviously a -20 temperature would win that too, even more so. But around here typically we don't get much. We rarely get below -10 degrees. And at -10 degrees, it just takes a mild wind at like 5 to 8 miles an hour that can run the wind chill below -20. Fortunately, usually we get those cold temperatures in the late evenings and early mornings. And by the time the sun rises, we start thawing out. And again, in my 10 years as being a superintendent, this is the first time I've ever had to call for cold alone.
Well, in Mount Pulaski is one of those districts. There's several. As I got to thinking about it, as I thought about this question a little bit, there's several districts where a majority of your I don't want to say a majority, enough of your student body is rural, where you've really got to take into consideration road conditions, temperatures. You got to take into effect a lot of variables.
Oh, absolutely. And I would say, the Clinton and Lincoln schools are in the same boat too, where they've got a vast area and they've got people coming from all corners. And, maybe 60% of the kids can get to school because they're in town just fine, but it can be very treacherous for the other 40% to just get out of their driveway some days. So, yeah, there's a lot to consider with that.
No question. Well, Mr. Lamkey, anything else on this eventful week we've been through? The snow, the calling off school, the issues in your buildings, those things, anything we haven't touched on with all that you want to put out there for us?
No, I just want to say that, like I said, it takes a good team of administrators and staff members to pull these things off. Our teachers have been they've been excellent about just overcoming what the situations we put them into, and our maintenance staff has been awesome at keeping these buildings running. The fact that, we're coming up Thursday into Friday, and knock on wood, I think we're going to make it 2 weeks without losing a day of class. Sure.
Very good. Mr. Lamkey, let's take a break here, my friend. Come back with some more. Fred Lamkey, Superintendent of Mount Pulaski Schools, on the phone with us. More to come with him on the WHOW Morning Show.
WHOW.
Exclusive benefits.
Let's check the markets on the RFD Radio Network. I'm DeLaw's Lamkey. Corn 3 to 4 lower today. March down 4.5, 437 3/4. May down 4.5, 449 1/4. July down 4, 458 1/2. Soybeans started the day higher. Right now, though, March is unchanged, 12.05 3/4. May down 1 1/4, 12.17. July down 2, 12.26 1/4. March wheat down 6 3/4, 5.75 3/4. KC down 1 3/4, 5.92 3/4. Livestock, we're higher. February lean hogs up 1/4, 71.70. Feb live cattle up 187. 174.97, and March feeders up 327, 233 and a nickel. Crude oil up 59 cents. It's the RFD Radio Network.
Central Illinois News, Agriculture, and Sports Station WHOW on all of its platforms, AM, FM, and streamed online, are bringing all the great things happening at our local high schools to the radio in January. We're hitting the road for the WHOW High School Road Tour. Join us as we broadcast live from Aurora Forsyth High School from 9 till 10 in the morning on Tuesday, January 23rd. Interviewing the Aurora Forsyth High School principal, athletic director, student council president, and one of the club student presidents. That is the WHOW High School Road Tour stop at Aurora Forsyth High School, Tuesday, January 23rd.
Find out how you and your family can save up to 40% on the meat, produce, and grocery items you use every day by clicking the Clinton Save-A-Lot icon at DeWittDailyNews.com.
Peterson Insurance Services in Clinton is a 2014 Pekin Insurance Illinois Agency of the Year. Jay Peterson here from Peterson Insurance. Find out about Pekin's auto, home, or life insurance by clicking on our icon at DeWittDailyNews.com.
Your friend in Central Illinois, WHOW.
Once again, a good morning. Thanks for being with us. I'm your host today, Seth Lawrence. My guest on the phone this morning is Mr. Fred Lamkey. He is the superintendent of Mount Pulaski Schools. The morning show streams to Facebook and YouTube, brought to you by Peterson Insurance, your Pekin Insurance agent in Clinton. Mr. Lamkey, we were talking about the process of calling off school, canceling school, and really, it's a multi. Adding to a layer to that is in the post-COVID world we live in, COVID forced us to learn from home for a time, and that has kind of carried over into the possibility that on, say, snow days, rather than just taking a day off of school, you can do some e-learning and count it as a day of school. So talk about that decision and the wrinkle it adds to that decision-making process.
Yeah, I think it's good to understand a little bit about e-learning first, because before COVID came on, they passed laws that said that schools could do e-learning. And so in the fall of 2019, I was working with my staff, and our school chose not to make an e-learning plan. We said, no, we don't want to do it. We don't want to have to teach kids online or that way, that we would rather not do it. Then the pandemic hit, and all of a sudden we had to do it. So we had to put an e-learning plan together. And so you go through the pandemic, and we used e-learning throughout. And then I think just in the political side of things, that people said, well, wait a minute. We don't want schools making a decision to use e-learning just because people are sick or because something like that's going on. So they changed the qualifiers to use an e-learning day. It has to be inclement weather, cold, snow, something like that.
Huh. So
it evolved like that. And so you don't think about it, but then this last year, and I think we've talked about before, we're doing the fiber optic boring around Mount Pulaski, and they hit water mains 3 times. And I lost 3 days of school in the last year because they hit water mains. And I called the regional and said, hey, can we do an e-learning day? They hit a water main. They go, no, you can't use it for that. I said, well, it's kind of like it's not an act of God. I said, it's something out of our control. Nope, it doesn't qualify. You can't use it. So we couldn't use e-learning for that. So it has to be for inclement weather. So like even for our burst pipes, if we wanted to take an e-learning day, we couldn't use it that way either. You can take an e-learning day, but it doesn't count as one of the days you're using towards your set number for the year.
And you would think that that would, and maybe it'll change, certainly is a possibility, but you would think like there would be some understanding like, oh, you know what, that's true. Like, let's make it like, let's adjust how we make this decision and allow you that opportunity to say, hey, we're not going to lose a day because this was out of our control, but we still have things to get done. You know what I mean?
Sure. And you would think so. It seems pretty common sense with that, but it's not the way it works. And you're right. Maybe it will change. I know I've given my displeasure to the Regional Office of Education in ISB, but I'm not sure how far that complaint goes, because how often do you have a water main break that takes you out of school?
Yeah.
Well, 3 times in a year for us, but it's never happened to me before in my career. But when you go back to what e-learning is, there's factors I take into consideration. Like the worst thing that happens in a year that you have a lot of snow days or days that you have to miss out on school is that when you push your calendar past Memorial Day, because in the school system, there's not a lot of great things that happen after the middle of May. About the time graduations start taking place, the instruction, the student's ability to take instruction and the teacher's ability to give instruction starts to wane in those last couple weeks of May. And you get past Memorial Day, nothing good happens after Memorial Day. So as a superintendent, when I'm making calendars and I'm working through it, I try to make sure our students are out before Memorial Day, and that's about as late as you want them to go. So like this year, I built in 2 days that before Memorial Day that we could use. Well, we had 2 water main breaks, so we butted right up to it. So when I'm considering an e-learning day, I'm asking myself, when's our best instructional time going to be? And while I know it's better to instruct kids in person than through e-learning, I also believe it's better to do e-learning in January than to try and have class Wednesday after Memorial Day. So those things kind of balance into your decisions about how you use it, because I'm a little old-fashioned. I'd like to give kids a good old snow day. I mean, I'm 6 years old, and I like a good snow day every now and then. But it really comes down to how it affects the district instructionally and what we're doing with our kids. So,
yeah,
again, like deciding a snow day at all, it's just a lot of factors coming in, and what's the best decision for our kids, their safety, and their instruction.
Well, and I wonder, too, Mr. Lamkey, like where you're at on the calendar, does that matter? For instance, the 16th was the day after the holiday for Martin Luther King Day. So, your kids haven't been in school for 3 days. Do you really want to implement a e-learning day where they weren't in the classroom the day before or something like that? Do you want to have them in the classroom, then maybe talk about that e-learning day day, or, I think of like Christmas break. We could get some bad weather the 1st of January, and, it impacts coming back the second semester. Like, do those things factor into your decision making?
Oh, they do. And especially we just had a 2-week Christmas break. We come in school for a few days, and then we have a 3-day weekend, and then next thing you know, it's a 4-day weekend. Well, it's not because we had e-learning, but it's still 4 days out of the classroom. So, yeah, absolutely, those things factor into what you're trying to decide. Also, early in the year, like if you have an event early in the year, maybe you can change your spring break too. Maybe we'll take a day off spring break, or off the Easter break, or off Christmas break. But when you get really close in time, families have made decisions, and you can't like substitute a break day for a snow day or something like that either, because families make plans and they count on you being consistent with that planning.
Mm-hmm.
So, there's a lot to consider with it. And as I said, starting us off, I'm going to be half wrong or half right no matter what I decide.
No doubt. Well, Mr. Lamkey, good discussion there. In our final few minutes together, I know when we talked in, that would have been November, I think.
November,
yeah, we didn't talk in December. November, the process to find your successor was wrapping up. Did that ever come to a conclusion?
Yes, it did. We have the Mount Pulaski Board of Education has selected Mr. Jason Spang to be our new superintendent of schools starting on July 1st. Mr. Spang is a Decatur native and a Aurora Forsyth graduate. He currently and has been the principal at Peatone High School, which is north of Kankakee, south of Chicago. I've had several opportunities to work with him. We're really trying to do a good orientation program with him, so when he hits the ground on July 1st, he can hit the ground running. And it's been a really good process so far. I've enjoyed the time I've spent with him, and I think Mount Pulaski is going to be very happy with their selection.
Sure, very good. So has that process started at all, or when do you really kind of get into the thick of things in terms of a transition plan?
Well, I've been so impressed with Mr. Spang because he's so organized and he's very systemic in his processes, which, if you ever talk to me, I'm big on systems. And so he's coming in with a great game plan. And every time he comes in on the day of every board meeting we have, he spends the day in district with board members, administrators, teachers, and myself. And then he attends the board meeting that night. And he has an agenda for every day, like, hey, these are things I want to talk about, things I want to learn. And we go over that agenda, and I go over the ideas. Like, we really spent a lot of time on finances last time around, and he's a sponge. And the fact that he is so organized with that, I think speaks volumes about him as a person and how he's going to take his approach to be a superintendent.
Yeah, for sure. Very good. Mr. Lamkey, where do folks go to keep up with all things happening in Mount Pulaski schools?
Well, as usual, we've got great web pages for our high school and grade school. You can find that at www.mountpulaski.k12.il.us. If you go on Facebook, we have, again, really strong Facebook pages for our schools. And if you search them on Facebook, they'll pop right in. And then you can find anything athletics for us on our Twitter sports at capital MPATHDIR. That's Mount Pulaski Athletic Director.
Sure.
And keep up to date with the successes of our kids and where they're at and where they're playing.
That is Mr. Fred Lamkey, Superintendent of the Mount Pulaski Schools. Network News is now.
The Big 1520 WHOW Clinton.